to another episode of the Mike the Principal podcast. This is season 2, episode 9. We're going to be talking about how feedback can impact school culture. This is an underrated area that I think is overlooked by school leaders often. So I think this is a really important topic for school leaders to engage in and think about how they deliver feedback to their instructional staff and then how that impacts school culture. So again, welcome back to Mike the Principal podcast. Hopefully you are listening on your favorite podcast platform or checking us out on YouTube. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and be sure to share this with any educators that might be in your life. If they can take away some things, especially if you know any school leaders out there, please be good to us and share away. So today what we're going to talk about, again, how feedback can impact school culture. And really, I want to talk about the idea, like if you are in a school, near a school, are a parent who's been in schools, or pay attention to the news media, with our teacher shortage, teachers are stressed. It is an extremely difficult job. We deal with humans, which can make it even more stressful. And there's something to be said for that, right? Like we have some things that are happening as a result of, I think, stress levels in schools, but among teachers more specifically. Definitely there's a correlation between stress levels and the number of folks that are leaving the job, even those who are incredible teachers that are veterans, leaving the job. And the reality for teachers is that their to-do list is ridiculously long, right? If you look at schools and districts, there's always implementation of new programs. There's never-ending list of new programs that go into schools and to districts. Always new technology tools that teachers need to become familiar with each year. There's conversation about longer school years and longer hours and even more remediation as we continue to talk about results of the pandemic and learning loss that may result from that. So there's lots of conversation about, more intensive instruction, longer hours, longer school days. And the reality, Rand Corporation put out recently a graphic that showed the numbers of hours that teachers are working. And, I think that there's a lot that will say, well, teachers have summers off and blah, blah, blah. But, the reality of the matter for our educators, our classroom teachers specifically, is that they are doing an incredible amount of work outside of their contracted day. And they are putting in a large number of work hours. And I think that's highlighted by this article from the Rand Corporation, which I'll share in the show notes. But, the stressors that our teachers are facing, they're often of our own creation. Like we're creating the stressors that exist for our schools. So, I've mentioned before, like what can we stop doing right now? And Justin Reich, who's a fellow principal and writes and shares quite a bit of content online, has this quote about like what can we stop doing? And you've heard me talk about that before, right? Like that's not new information for anybody who might be listening to the things I have to say. Is that if we're not doing things purposely, we need to just stop doing them. So, these stressors that we're putting on to our educators are often created by us. So, as a school leader, I was always thinking about like what can I take off of the plates of my teachers to make their job more effective and really just let them focus on the kids and the teaching. And, teachers also, they need validation that they're doing a good job. I mean, who doesn't, right? Like, everybody loves to be, positive reinforcement and being told that the work that you're doing is effective. And I think that that's an important piece. And we have these evaluation systems and every state, every district within a state is different in terms of how they implement their evaluation systems. And they are in place to provide feedback. But I would tell my school leader friends out there who are listening to to tread lightly there, right? Like, and I'm going to explain this throughout the episode, but there's a need for us to uncouple our evaluation systems and how we provide feedback to our staff. And that's really, really important. And there's a challenge, right? Like, we know the research is pretty clear that there's a challenge in doing so. A 2021 study by Brown University concluded that there's a lot of our evaluation systems are extremely top heavy. They require a large amount of work, not just on the teacher's end, but on the administrative end as well. And it's a lot of checking of boxes. And I don't know that that's going to give us the results that we want to, nor is it going to help reduce the amount of stress and help us retain teachers. And that's highlighted by the Brown University study, which again, I'll drop in the show notes so you can check that out. But the power of the system when it is defined or designed effectively, we can do a pretty good job at predicting how teachers are going to perform when the system's designed properly. And there's a lot of resources available. There's a lot of research done there. When there's effective design of teacher evaluation systems, it can give us a really good idea of how well a teacher is going to perform, but also how the students are going to perform. But even more importantly, where the supports for professional learning can be implemented. And there's a lot of research, and I'll share some research specifically by the Gates Foundation that talks a lot about that. So, getting back to the topic of today's episode, how can the feedback that you're giving specifically impact the school culture that you're implementing? And I think this is, again, a really important question. What do I mean by impacting school culture, right? Because I don't think we often think about evaluation and our systems that we're using to provide feedback to staff as a way to impact school culture. And the reality of the matter is that evaluation for many of our school leaders is also challenging, right? Like the amount of time that can be consumed, often the complexity of the evaluation systems. I got to be honest with you. I wish, and if you know me, you know this, like, I wish we would let's just say what you mean. Like, why do we have to disguise what we mean in all of this educational jargon with these, if you're not let's just speak plain and transparently about what we need to do. And I think that that's an area where when I'm providing feedback to staff, I just want to tell them what I love and what I didn't love and ways that they can potentially improve, right? So, for us as leaders, that can be really, really challenging. That's not easy. So, and when, you can front load information at the beginning part of the year, and it's really important that you do that, not just with your new staff, but with veteran staff as well, because when they don't know what's expected of them, when it comes from the evaluation side, evaluation is something that makes people really, really nervous. As a principal, when my superintendent or assistant sup was going to do my evaluation, that's a nerve-wracking experience, and we can't forget that. So you control, as the building leader, what information gets to your staff, and I think you need to frame that in a way that is really non-threatening. And you might think that it didn't sound threatening, but I think with your leadership team, you need to be really explicit and intentional about making sure that this is not something that should be adding to the stress of teachers, right? Evaluation is something that just is there. It's ever present. It's not going away. But I'm going to, as a school leader, help you get through that and navigate the complexity of that, specifically for your teachers that are newer to the job, because that's a huge stress for folks. And that's our reality. The idea that some in our leadership ranks want to document every little thing in an evaluation system for a teacher. If that's what you're doing, if you want to just use it as documentation purposes, you're probably in the wrong profession. That is not how you lead. Evaluation is not about documentation. It is not about compliance. Those are things you should be dealing with through critical conversations. And if you think that sending an email or putting something and documenting it in the evaluation when you've never had a conversation with a teacher, no. Like, that is not an effective way to move your school forward and build a strong culture focused on teaching and learning for rock star teachers. Like, they're going to leave, period. So, how are you gonna do that? So thinking that, like, if you're a leader and you're using it for documentation purposes, right, to like ding them on every little thing, get over yourself, and you really need to start looking at like the real purpose behind evaluation and feedback. And I think one of the things that prevents leaders sometimes is that they're afraid of providing critical conversations with staff. And I'm going to tell you how I did that. And the fear exists, and it's real, because they're afraid of running off good teachers. Like, they're afraid that if I tell you something's wrong, you're going to leave. And the reality of the markets right now is that, like, teachers can do that. Like, they can pick and choose where they want to teach. And that's a reality leaders need to think about. So, like, I understand that concern, but there's a way to change that, right? So let's talk about that a little bit. And it's the mindset of, and if you ever have worked for me or with me or heard me talk, I talk a lot about return on investment. And our job when we hire someone is to invest in them. So every new hire that I brought into the building, I looked at as an investment. It was and I expected a return on that investment. But just like investments that you might make in your financial life, like, you want to take care of your investments and make sure that they continue to grow. So I was extremely explicit in changing the narrative in my building to make sure that folks understood that when we hired you and brought you on our team, you were our people. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I would make a ton of mistakes throughout my career. But it does mean that when mistakes are made or things are not done the way that they need to be done, we can engage in a safe space to have a critical conversation, to know that I'm not dinging you every time on an evaluation. And instead, I'm pouring into you to help you grow to become the best teacher that you possibly can be. And that's a very different frame than just going in and saying, hey, you're going to be evaluated 4 times this school year. Here are the things that I'm looking for. Here are the 4 levels that you're going to be evaluated on. If you don't do these things, blah, blah, blah. And like, if you think that that's going to help you retain teachers, you're crazy. Like, you need to rethink that and get back with your leadership team and change that narrative immediately. And, sharing what's expected early on in the school year is a great way to be able to do that, and making sure that not only, like, you shouldn't just do something at the beginning of the school year and talk about your evaluation. If these things that you're working on and that you want to see in classrooms are important to you, you need to make sure that your professional learning is aligned to those things, right? If I say that this is important to me, or if I want to work on text structures with my students and I want to see that in classrooms, then I want to make sure that my professional learning is aligned to support the needs of my teachers. So don't just say, like, hey, here's the things you're expected to do, or here's your growth plan, we're never going to touch it again. Like, that's not going to be effective for you. That's not going to help you grow your instructional staff and move student performance and the school culture forward. It's just not going to happen. And there's ways of doing that, right? Like, you can get your folks together in collective workshops. You can put together, there's great online platforms where you can do some asynchronous work so that you can give them the important pieces that they need to have, because we all know that time is not something that we have a lot of in the K-12 space. So there are ways for you to be able to design asynchronous content so that they can consume it when they want to. And I think that that's another great way to be able to get that information. The Brown University study that I mentioned at the top of the episode also talks about collegial feedback, right? And like getting teachers with other teachers to talk through what it is they're going to be evaluated on. Also, not just that, but allowing, like, building a culture where it's okay to be observed. Like, you're not going to, the purpose of observation is not to ding you on an evaluation. The purpose of observation is to help you grow. So the more people that you can have give you feedback on a lesson, the stronger that's going to become. And if you can build a culture where it becomes part of the school, just your practice and what you do, where teachers observe other teachers and provide feedback, that can be extremely non-threatening to folks. And I think it's a great way to help build that culture. Now, you won't be able to turn that overnight, because there is a feeling of comfort that needs to be attained for people to be able to welcome other people into their classroom. That's not common in education. So I think that that's something you need to work on. And it's also, like, I think you can't underestimate the value of rubrics in this process. And I'm not just talking about the rubrics that might come with the evaluation system. While those are important, making sure that your teachers know and understand what those mean and what your look fors are. But I think also creating rubrics that are unique, and it might be part of a customized walkthrough tool. At my schools, we always generated our own customized walkthrough tool that provided immediate feedback to teachers, so that literally when I walked out the door, I click submit, boom, it's in their email. They don't have to wait for it. They're not waiting for me for several days to understand and feeling nervous and adding to their stress about what did my principal think about what they saw. I wanted them to have that feedback right away. But knowing what's expected of them, like, we aligned our rubric to our professional learning for the school year. So, like, you knew the things that we were working on as a school, and the work that our leadership team was engaged in terms of professional learning, it was aligned to what our look fors were when we were in classrooms. And then our feedback was aligned to that as well. So that's a really important piece. And that's how you can, these are some of the strategies that you can implement. And I'm going to talk through a couple more, but one of the first things you do, I just mentioned walkthrough tools. Like, you should create your own walkthrough tool it's not attached to the evaluation system. I have found in my years of leadership experience, when I have decoupled the feedback that I provide internally in my building from our evaluation system, it is helpful. I also explain to my staff that is where, like, my leadership team, we will ask questions that are critical of you from time to time. But it's not going to be something that we're going to document in an evaluation system unless we need to, right? Like, now, if I have a conversation with you about the same thing like 4 or 5 times, then that's a different story, right? Like, then that moves over to evaluation world, right? Like, you're not keeping up with your professional responsibilities. But I wanted to be able to provide them with feedback sometimes that was critical, missed opportunities, strategies that they could change or adapt. Sometimes I'd go into classrooms and things would fail miserably, but I want to inform that teacher and just say, like, that was not good. Like, that doesn't give them feedback to make an adjustment. Like, I want them to have that immediate feedback to be able to improve the work moving forward. And I think the more that they can understand, another strategy that's really important, the more that they know what you're looking for when you come in to provide that feedback, and again, making sure it's aligned to your professional learning, is really important. And creating a strategy that was extremely important for me was creating a space where anybody in our building could fail, and that was going to be okay. Like, creating a safe space to fail, I think that's really important. And you can fail without it impacting you on your evaluation. Like, that's a really important thing for our teachers to know. And I think you'll be shocked at how much it decreases the stress level for a teacher when you're talking about evaluation and all the other things that are adding. It allows you to provide that critical feedback when you're walking through. And the other piece that we had just, dabbled in here and there is, if you can get your teachers to allow you to video their sessions, watching that back with them is an incredibly powerful tool. Why do you think professional sports and athletes and colleges, they review film? they look at the mistakes that they made, and that can be an incredibly powerful tool to use with your teachers as you're coaching them in the work. And, some other resources that I'll share with you. I teach part-time at University of Central Florida. And one of the things that we do are called teaching squares, and that's a feedback model for our instructional staff. So I'm going to share that. I'll drop that in the show notes as well. But anytime you can get other teachers to see other teachers and model best practices for them, the better off you're going to be. So I hope you found some of this information helpful. I don't think you can underestimate how important building a culture of feedback is to your overall school culture and the stress level of your teachers and staff. So really give that some thought. Have that conversation with your leadership team as you go into the building this week or next, and really put your model on the table and ask, do we have a system where we can provide immediate feedback that is non-threatening to our teachers? It still might be critical, but they can receive it in a way where they know what was expected of them, and they can use that information to move their work. So, again, I think it's really important, surveying your teachers, asking your teachers, getting in PLCs and listening to what they have to say, or asking questions as you redevelop these systems is really important. As always, if you or your school are looking for solutions through professional learning, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we could chat about the work that NCEE, the work that I do, as the Florida State Director. I'm happy to support in any way that I possibly can. If you like what you heard, don't forget, always be sure to click the subscribe button and share it with educators in your life. I always appreciate the shares, the likes, the comments. Feel free to drop them anytime. Until next time, we'll see you later.